So, some people are looking around the world and they're saying, how in the world is New Earth coming so soon when we can look around and just see just how messed up things are with this whole pandemic happening, panic-demic happening, lockdown, the economy crashing, some people being out of work, and the list just goes on and on. I mean, we are literally surrounded by AI, and some of you know exactly what I mean when I say that. I think New Earth isn't going to be something that happens in the quote unquote external world, to begin with, anyway. I think it'll be a long time before New Earth is seen everywhere in what we refer to as the external world. But New Earth is still being experienced within the hearts of some people right now. You don't have to wait, because New Earth is something that is experienced within yourself. Now, even though it's something that occurs within yourself, it may not be easy to get there, though. And I say that because there are layers of consciousness, or what some people call dimensions, that we have to essentially climb over first. And I use the word climb because when you're at the bottom, it can feel as exhausting as having to literally climb a mountain. And to make things even trickier, you can fall down that mountain and have to start your climb over. You have to start the climb up all over again. But it is possible to get to higher ground and to get to the New Earth. So, I've said this already in many of my videos, but for anyone who is new to my channel, I'm just going to say it. There is no external world somewhere out there that exists independent of consciousness. That'd be like saying a dream could exist outside of the dreamer in some kind of external world. Reality bubbles are real. It's what each of us lives in, for lack of a better term, and our combined reality bubbles is what makes up the collective consciousness. What you call the external world is actually the collective consciousness that's being filtered through your individual consciousness or individual awareness. I think that what our society calls the laws of nature are actually laws of consciousness. And this matrix is so cunning that it tricked all of us into believing that matter was composed of something other than consciousness. There's still, don't get me wrong, there's still tables and chairs and bodies, but they don't exist in the way that we've been conditioned to think they do. At the root of those tables, chairs, and bodies are waves. Waves that have been collapsed into what we call particles through the act of observation, really through the act of consciousness. Matter is just a word. It's just a word. It's just a label. If the alphabet were never invented, I personally believe we'd be that much closer to seeing this so-called world for what it really is, instead of giving everything a name and saying that because we've given it a label or a name that we just have it all figured out. We have it all figured out. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, we're not even close to having it all figured out in this lower realm of collective consciousness. Now, because the collective consciousness of this realm is composed of mostly individual consciousnesses that are of a lower negative vibration or frequency. We're seeing the chaos that is going on right now in the quote unquote external world. That lower stuff is there to keep you trapped in the lower matrix dimension that most people here live in. And the lower you are, the harder it is to remember what you are, which is a holographic consciousness fractal of God. And I'm not immune to the amnesia either. And it is a state of amnesia. I've been so out of it from the amnesia that I lost all hope for a while at one time. I think the amnesia is caused by lower frequency emotions like depression, anxiety, desperation, fear, boredom. The lockdown has nothing to do with what the media is saying, and everything to do with trying to make us feel those negative emotions. Because, when we're in that state, we can't remember that the new earth is already there, just waiting for us. The OPs that run this matrix, their mission is to do everything they can to keep you feeling those lower frequency emotions, because they know that higher frequency emotions like love, gratitude, and happiness, though, that's the fuel that can propel us up the mountain to the new earth. I actually made a chart based on Tesla's findings talking about this that I want to repost. And if you're interested in hearing about how this chart relates to Tesla's findings, I'll put a link in the description below this video. Now, I don't know exactly what's making the dimensions merge. There does seem to be an acceleration with that. I know that ultimately God is playing a role in all this, but it may be that there's some kind of technology that is doing something as well as God playing a role too. Maybe there's multiple things going on simultaneously that could be causing the merging. But if you're interested in that topic, check out the video in the description below. It's titled Mandela Effect Cause Answered by Tesla. But anyways, here is my New Earth chart that's based on Tesla's work. So as y'all can see, I made a rudimentary illustration of the breakdown of dimensions. You can think of these layers of reality as dimensions, as well as layers of awareness within each person's consciousness that vary based on an individual's frequency. I also think it is possible to sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes jump back and forth between dimensional layers. And with each reality dimension, there's layers of awareness within each reality, if that makes sense. It's represented by the lines that I put in. Tesla's work actually found that there are many frequency layers, but my chart only includes a couple of the levels that Tesla found. So our base level began on a reality where there was no Mandela effect that was perceived. As the dimension slightly above the original base reality began to collapse or merge with us, some people became aware of the ME. Now, keep in mind, the majority of the population is still trapped in the original base reality. With time, many people who are already Mandela affected will become aware of the merging of the veil barriers of fear, terror, and delusion. as it merges with our Mandela effect layer reality. So when the veil barrier of fear and illusion merges, we'll be able to perceive NPCs more easily. We'll be able to perceive possessed people. When the veil barrier of terror and illusion merges with a person's dimension, they'll most likely, I think, be able to they'll go through sort of spiritual persecution. I really think that this is the dimension where many targeted individuals live in until they're able to transcend above it. So just like the people trapped at the base reality of the pre-mandela earth, we can become trapped in the negative veil barriers if we don't use our free will to burst through the veil of terror and illusion to get to the new earth. At first, the only clue that we're on the new earth will be our emotions. Even though chaos will be going on around us, we will feel a strong, tangible sense of peace and grace. Eventually, if we can train ourselves to remain in those feelings of peace and grace, despite what may be going on around us, our senses will expand to view the new earth instead of only being able to feel the new earth. We'll not only be able to feel profound feelings of peace and bliss, but we will also be in an earth dimension where all the chaos that was previously going on around us has disappeared, and there will be nothing but beauty in our environment. Colors will look deeper and brighter than ever there, and music and sounds will be very amplified and clearer than ever. But the new earth dimension is what I call the infinitely heavenly realms. I think once a person gets to that level, they may not even need a physical body. I'm assuming it will be generations before people born on earth can climb to the infinitely heavenly realms while still living on earth. I'm not sure of the source of what's making dimensions merge. I think it's got to be at least two sources. I think what's going on may be related to ascension, spiritual evolution, whatever phrase you'd like to use. There are biblical terms for this as well. It may seem scary when the veil barriers of fear, terror, and illusion merge, but ultimately, I think that it's what our soul needs to go through in order to burst through that veil and make it through to the other side, to the new earth dimension. This bursting through the veil will probably, I think, be done on an individual level. I mean, we could literally be sitting next to someone who is in the pre-Mandela world reality while we're in the first new earth dimension, or maybe even in one of the veil barriers of fear and illusion layer. And people wouldn't even be able to tell, since, we're all kind of living in the same physical space with only our awareness being in different dimensions. I think the thing we need to be on guard on, or be on guard of, is just because we burst through one of the dimensional veils, that doesn't mean we can't sink back down into a previous dimension that we were in. I think it truly is continuous work that the soul needs to take part in to ensure that they stay in the dimension that they want to stay in. Maybe we are in frequency training boot camp of sorts, where we have to learn how to raise our frequency and move to the dimension we want through honing our free will. A sort of soul training where we learn how to board and stay on a kind of consciousness arc that will help raise us to the dimension where we want to be. Sounds easy, right? Just think a happy thought like in Peter Pan and we can fly, but the lower dimensions will throw all kinds of dirt at us to manipulate our way of thinking and manipulate our belief systems and trick us into staying in the dimensions below the new earth. That's what the media was created for. I wouldn't be surprised if half the people listening to this were offended by me even mentioning the term dimension because of what this world has conditioned them to think about the word dimension. When I use that word, it's just dimension is simply a term I'm using to refer to a person's frequency state of consciousness and awareness. So, how do we burst through all of these veils and make it through to higher dimensions? I think we have to control our thoughts. When we're able to control our thoughts, we can directly control our beliefs and feelings. I think there's a direct, well, I don't think, I know that there's a direct connection between our thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. I will say listening to positive music really helps too. Also, a huge part to being able to ride the consciousness arc to the new earth is how ready our soul is. If our soul is not ready to transcend its previous conditioning of illusions and false beliefs, it will not be able to pierce through the veil. With someone who is not ready, there's no amount of evidence you can present and nothing you can say to someone to make them come to the new earth dimension with you. It's an individual choice that each person will have to make on their own. And, as sad as it is to see our loved ones choosing not to ascend, people's free will is still a great gift from God. It's our free will that will keep us in the lower dimensions or allow us to ascend to the new earth. It's a lot of work, but it can be done. And the dimensional merging, they will only speed up the process. So the only question is, it's which dimension are you content with living in? So that was a clip from my video that I posted back in 2018. I think the way the different layers of dimensions, i.e. different levels of consciousness work, is it's almost like there's multiple worlds going on in the same space simultaneously, but the worlds aren't like separate. To us it seems like they're different worlds or different earths, but I think that's only because our awareness can usually only observe one or two dimensional layers of earth at a time. Really, in a way, you could say it's all the same one earth, but it's how that world is being observed that determines the dimensional level you find yourself on. It's all one earth, but it's hard to explain. Now, when I say it's how you observe, it that determines which earth dimension you're in. I don't want to make it seem like we can create an entirely new dimension based on, your opinions alone. These are real, tangible, dimensional consciousness layers that reside on the earth. It is the earth. Don't forget, earth is not something that exists independent of consciousness, both individual consciousness and collective consciousness. So, depending on the state of your consciousness, you may find yourself on the t.i.s earth dimension or targeted individual earth dimension, or you could find yourself on the pre-mandela effect earth or on the new earth dimension. It all depends on you. That's how it's possible that you could be on the new earth and the person standing next to you in the same room isn't on the new earth. No one can experience your experience but you. No one experiences your consciousness but you. Again, in the beginning years, new earth will start out as it will start out as a feeling of bliss that comes from God, that is felt. Oh, here come the noisy neighbors that always want to be outside my window making noise. And their dog that barks. Sorry, I apologize for that. Usually whenever I'm doing these videos, I stop the recording, wait for them to go away, and then start back up again. But I guess I'll just keep going. It's just a continuous thing with them. But like I was saying, I think New Earth will start out as a feeling of bliss that comes from God, that is felt within your body and mind, regardless of what the room around you looks like. New Earth won't necessarily start out as something that you can see with your eyes right in front of you, maybe. Now, your consciousness will always be the God-given instrument that observes and collapses the wave into a particle and ultimately constructs your reality. That's why the sky looks different to some of us and looks the same to other people. It's one sky, but it's being filtered through countless individual consciousnesses who are all viewing it through slightly different lenses of perception. Now, and those lenses of perception, what that is that's your consciousness. Now, even though the sky is changed, don't think you're going to open up your front door and your driveway will be gone and you'll be standing in some kind of sparkling new earth garden. Now, I will say nature has become more beautiful and vivid, almost like HD vivid. But anyways, I'm gonna be making a video that's going to explain why some people will never ever make it to the new earth and what it's like to be on the targeted individual earth dimension. That video will have people's first-hand accounts. And I want to make that video not to scare people, but just to give people an idea of what it's like to be in that dimensional layer of earth, so that people who are experiencing that can see that they aren't alone in what they're going through. So thank you for watching this video, and once I make that video, I'll go back to this video and I'll put a link in the description below. So take care, and I'll talk to you later.